In Angular, you could use a special construct called a filter to change the output of an expression. And you could do that either in HTML or in JavaScript. So here we have an example of a filter being applied to some value, and it's an uppercase filter, which means whatever the value is, it will go ahead and take that string and uppercase it. Angular supplies us with some predefined filters, like the one you see uppercase. There's also lowercase, currency, number, etc. Obviously, we would need to inject the filter service, in other words, $filter, in our controller first so we could use that in our code. So the filter service is a filter function creating service. So in other words, this part of the statement creates a filtering function and then it gets executed using the parens right after it. So we just put the whole thing in one line, but really could have created the filtering function first and then called it with the parens value. Filtering functions sometimes have custom arguments that change the way the filtering function is filtering or changing the expression output. To change the way the filtering function changes the output, you pass it custom arguments, and the arguments are specific custom arguments to each particular filter. So in this case, we see the currency filter, and you could pass it a couple of arguments, which we'll actually see in examples when we jump to the code editor. A really neat feature in Angular is that you could also use these filters straight in your HTML file, just by placing a pipe between the output of some expression and the name of the filter. Now, obviously, the expression doesn't have to be a string literal as I placed here in this example, but it could be anything that is a $scope.value, whatever the value would be, which in this case will evaluate to hello in the controller. So you can attach a value to the scope service and then just output value right here instead of a string literal hello. And as I said, when you place an expression followed by a pipe and the name of the filter to apply, the output of this entire expression will be hello in all uppercase. We could likewise apply custom arguments inside the HTML as well. All we have to do is separate those custom arguments by a colon. So in this case, you see the currency filter is being applied with some custom arguments separated by a colon. Let's jump into the code editor and see some examples of this. So we're back in our code editor, and I'm located in lecture 12 folder, which is located in full stack course 5/examples folder. And since my browser sync is already started, I can take a look that my same app, basically a copy of it, feed Yakov1, has this message that we keep outputting from a method called Yakov likes to eat healthy snacks at night. Well, let's go ahead and in our app.js change this phrase, Yakov likes to eat healthy snacks at night, to all uppercase. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to use the filtering service. So the first thing we need to do is we need to augment our $inject property that we placed on our message controller. And we'll go ahead and do that and tell it that we're also going to inject a filter service. And obviously we actually need to go ahead and place the filter service so it gets injected properly. So now we're done. What we could do is we could create a var called message. I'll just call it for short MSG. And we'll just copy this whole thing and make that the message. Let's go ahead and copy that. And what we're going to do is we're going to use a filtering service to create a filtering function that will uppercase everything. But we'll go ahead and apply the message as a value to it at the same time. So we'll go ahead and say output. And now we need to create the filtering service. And the filtering service will use uppercase filter. And once we have this uppercase filter function, we can now execute it with our message as the argument. Now that we're done, we have to substitute this with our output. So that's going to be the output. We'll save it, go to our HTML page, and as you can see that everything now is in uppercase. So the question, of course, is how did I know? Where did I figure out this uppercase? Where did that come from? Well, let's go back to the browser and go to angularjs.org. And if you go under develop and developer guide, you'll see that a whole bunch of different topics here. One of them is filters. So if we click on this filters one, it will explain you a whole bunch of things about filter, but one of the things it will link to you is Angular comes with a collection of built-in filters. So let's go ahead and click on that. And you could see the names of all these built-in filters right here. And one of them is uppercase, as we've been using. And if you click on it, you'll get some documentation as to how to use it in JavaScript, which is what we did just now, and how to use it inside of an HTML template or inside of HTML. So let's go ahead and back out of this for a minute and go to the currency filter and take a look what we have available here. So the currency filter can be applied just like we applied the uppercase filter, with the first argument being the amount, then the symbol like a $sign, and then the fraction size like 0.00, 0.000, and so on. Let's go ahead and use this documentation, but let's use the HTML version of it and create a little line that will show us the cost of the cookie Yaakov is eating. So let's go to the HTML page, and right after the button right here, we'll go ahead and say cost, and we'll give it an expression. Let's say cookie cost, and we'll give it a filter of currency. And we'll just leave it like that for now. Of course, nothing is going to work yet since we didn't define what the cookie cost is on our scope service. So let's go back to the app and let's define the cookie cost. Let's go scope.cookie cost, and let's give it 45 cents, 0.45. Notice we're not giving it $45 or $0.45 as a string. We're giving it as a real number, so we can actually do then, let's say, some cookie calculation or something. If I'm eating 100 cookies instead of just one, it's possible if I try hard enough. So now that we've defined the cookie cost on the scope service, we could go to our web page and see that it updated with $0.45. So it knew to insert a 0 to that string, to keep the period, and then 45 and put the $sign in front of it. So let's customize this a little bit, and instead of the $sign, let's create a sign for my own currency, which I'm obviously going to make up, and we'll also extend the 45 to have a couple more zeros afterwards, so because my own currency is super exact. So if I go back to my editor and go to my HTML page, so I can use the colon to supply its first argument, or its first custom argument, which is the currency sign, and in my case it's going to be number sign blah. But we also wanted to extend the 0.000 and make it as exact as 4 decimal places instead of just 2. So we'll put another colon there, and we'll put number 4. We'll save that, we'll go back, and you can see now the cost of this cookie is number sign or hash sign blah 0.45, and we're going now to 4 decimal points instead of just 2. And all our previous functionality obviously still works, so let's go ahead and feed Yaakov just for fun of it. Cool.